I'm Josh, and I'm the host of the Beamable Game Dev Podcast. On today's episode, we are talking with Beamable's CEO, John Radoff, and COO, Trapper Markels. And we are answering the question, what pain point does Beamable solve for the game dev? Let's get into the interview. How are you guys?
I am awesome.
I'm so glad to hear it. John, I'm going to start with you. We're going to get to know you guys a little bit, and then we're going to jump into our main topic in just a bit. But John, you're a gamer. Where did it start? Where did it start for you?
Well, it's kind of defined my entire life. If I look back, I mean, the two things that I grew up with were computers and Dungeons and Dragons. So, gaming obviously straddled both of those. So, I think got my D&D basic set as a Christmas present when I was 9 years old. Was playing arcade games, and the main reason I wanted to learn how to program was to make games.
What was one of the favorites from the arcade?
Favorites. Chopper Command stood out because I never made the game that I wanted to make, but I just loved the idea of a side scroller at that time where I could kind of design all the maps, come up with all kinds of cool enemies to shoot at. So that was one of the first games that actually made me want to be a programmer.
Gotcha. Trapper, how about you? Where did it start with gaming?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think it goes back to, I had a Tandy 1000 and my parents, were fine with that computer, but a friend of mine had gotten a new 386 and was playing a game called Wing Commander. And my parents said, if you can sell this Tandy 1000 and, use the money to buy a 386, then, you can get Wing Commander too. And so I grew up in a little town, Homer, Alaska. Not a lot of ways to sell things to people. You had to go on the radio and you had to say, hey, I have a computer for sale. Does anyone want to buy it? And then that would get broadcast around the bush. And then someone would, call your phone number and set up a time to come see it. So anyway, I was able to get that deal done. I was able to sell that Tandy 1000 and get a 386 with a VGA monitor and was able to start playing Wing Commander. And then from there, I think it went into bulletin boards and door games and things like that, a lot of like online tech. And then that, sort of created my whole interest in the internet and gaming kind of beyond that. But yeah, all started with hustling to get rid of my Tandy so I could upgrade to the good stuff.
I love that. That's incredible. The announcement over the radio to make the sale. That's awesome. So I know both of you guys are very busy, but I'm sure you still take a little bit of time to play some games. John, what are you currently playing right now?
I just picked up Mass Effect Legendary. And, Mass Effect 2 is one of my favorite games of all time. I might have said my favorite up until Last of Us 2 came out. And then I'd say they're kind of tied now. It's hard to choose which one, but I'm playing through it again. So I'll see if I can revisit that. But the storytelling is awesome. I think it's got some emotional moments in the storytelling in the first one. And then the second one in particular are just fantastic.
Love it. Trapper, how about you? What are you playing?
I recently started playing with a bunch of friends again on a weekly basis. So every Wednesday night. And the games that we're spending a lot of time in is Rocket League. I'm trying to get up to speed in Rocket League and not be completely useless. But I've had a couple of matches where I was VIP of the match. I got a hat trick last week in one of my matches, so I was super excited about that. And then I'm actually playing this game that came out on Xbox Game Pass. It's on Steam. It's called Super Animal Royale. It's this like 64-player 2D top-down twin stick battle royale shooter where you're these little animals and you parachute out of a giant flying duck and you run around the map like Fortnite and Warzone and you loot weapons and armor and you try and be the last person or the last team standing. And it's just fun, infinitely playable. You can like pass controllers with your kids, they can do a round and then you do a round. And I've never won yet. The farthest I got was I got a second place one time. I can generally finish top 10 most of the time by sneaking around. But it's fun, easy to play, super fun game, cool community. Yeah, good stuff.
I'm gonna have to check that one out for sure. So let's jump into the meat and potatoes here. And we're gonna answer the question. You guys are gonna answer the question. What is the pain point that Beamable is trying to solve for the game dev? And John, feel free to kind of maybe give us a little bit of history with Disruptor Beam and how this whole thing came about.
Yeah, well, let me try to answer both of those. We're really just giving game developers the opportunity to build a business around their game idea. So there's millions of game developers today. The hardest part of launching a game is actually turning it into a business. So the tools like Unity have made it incredibly easy to create 3D graphics and storytelling and a lot of the experiential aspects of gameplay. Like so much of this has changed incredibly over really just the last few years. So that's kind of thing is in reach of the indie developer or a small team, or even at large companies. It's changed the way games are created. You could look at something like Hearthstone, which was built by an incredibly small team by Activision standards. So that technology has put the tools in the hands for creative expression into so many more people. So what is the hard part of making a game? The hard part is updating it, making it socially connected between the people that play it, having a store, having a virtual goods economy. All of that stuff ends up being like 70-80% of the effort to launch a game today. And to me, that's completely upside down. That should be the easy part, right? It should be like e-commerce is today. So if you want to launch a shop online, you just go to Shopify and in like a few minutes, you're launching it. In-game development, some people have done an amazing job of this in certain environments. Like I take a lot of inspiration from Roblox, for example. So my kids have sat down and they've made stuff in Roblox. My kids are 10 years old. And I just think that the reason that has happened is because in Roblox, they made it easy to do stuff, not just the front end, but if you want to have virtual goods and social connections between players and real-time multiplayer, they just make it out of the box and easy. But what we now need to do is take that ability to create a live game and the ease that exists in something like the walled gardens of Roblox, but open that up to the whole world of developers so that they have the freedom to do it however they want. So you asked me like what was the history behind it? So, I've been super fortunate, not just Disruptor Beam, but in a number of other companies of being able to see this industry through a few different lenses. I've been in game development. Game development, as we talked about earlier, one of the earliest things I did, I was making games as a kid. Met my future wife in an online game, and we launched a game studio together to compete with the game we were playing. And then more recently, Disruptor Beam, we were making story-based games. We talked about Mass Effect. Well, I love story-based games, and I wanted to do that on mobile and social network games. Built, Disruptor Beam to take the stories of favorite worlds like Star Trek and Game of Thrones and bring it to life in that environment. Have also been on the ad networking side of the business, working with Trapper at a company called Gamer DNA. We created recommendation technology for games and built a pretty sizable ad network around it. So we've been on demand gen. And then I've been on the enterprise side, creating what was basically blog and wiki software so that websites could be updated by anybody who needs to support their corporate information online. So what that has sort of equipped me with is the ability to see how you scale a technology business and turn it into a real software company. It's shown me the challenges that people have in acquiring customers, and especially certainly the visceral feel of just how hard it is to build games and be successful at it. And at Disruptor Beam, we were very lucky. We were successful most of the time, but we had some train wrecks as well. As I think virtually any game studio that's built more than one game has had good and bad experiences. And just what those experiences taught me is you got to keep your expenses low. You've got to rapidly iterate. You've got to be able to try things. You have to have an agile framework for building your game. And anything that takes away from that is just going to decrease your chances of success. So coming out of Disruptor Beam, I really wanted to take some of what we learned from those experiences and put that power in the hands of any game developer that, as I mentioned earlier, wants to build a business around games, not just build a game, but build a business around the games that they've always dreamt about.
Yeah, and just to build on that, so when John was having this idea around Beamable and how to put it together, a big piece of it was figuring out how are we going to take the technology that was inside of the game studio and create an entirely separate business around that. And one of the advantages was the technology that powers Beamable has worked for hundreds of tens of millions of players, over $100 million in revenue. So the platform itself that Beamable is now built on today has already served massive games, massive scale. And so now we're just in the process of really kind of productizing that and making all of these tools that we built to solve our own problems inside of Disruptor Beam accessible and able to be solved across any game that's interested in building a live game on a game platform.
Yeah, good point, Trapper, because I think people underestimate the complexity level that can actually come with some scale as well. So we've already gone through a lot of those growing pains, and we know that this stuff scales way, way out to many, many millions of users. The worst time to have to solve those problems is right when you're having success, actually, right? Because at that time, you should be doubling down, adding more content, working with your players to find out the features of the game that they actually care about so that you can bring the experience that people really love about the game and expand on it and build that community, not be constantly chasing technical problems and just making sure that the game stays working. And all those, and that kind of set of technical challenges around getting the base infrastructure working is also what slows you down in development. So, I think there's sort of the before you release and then the post release. So before release, I think the mission is how do you just make sure that all of those pieces that you were just talking about are not what actually slow you down? And that remains true as you go live as well. But then after you go live, it's about doubling down on the things that people really like.
I'd say the other thing,
those things we just talked about.
Yeah, I think another area too is anything that happens even before you start building the game. Like when you're thinking about even scoping the kind of game that you are going to build, there's a certain aspect of, I want to build a game, but the technology to really power a live game experience and all of the content and all the social pieces is too complicated. So I'm going to downscope my vision and I'm going to build, a very kind of focused single player experience or something that doesn't even have those tech. So the hope with something like Beamable is that as more developers find out about it, the horizon of the kinds of games that can be built and the types of social experiences that can be built within games is going to dramatically increase for small teams. We even see this today and talking to a lot of devs and participating in game jams. It's like a lot of them are like, well, I'm going to build local multiplayer because, building online multiplayer is too complicated. And so we want to change that to where it's like, if you want to build something like networked multiplayer with leaderboards and social experiences, you should be able to do that, in minutes. That shouldn't be a huge trade-off that you have to make around, hey, do I spend my time building my game or do I spend my time building network code for multiplayer or multiplayer integration? Like we want to make those things accessible so that more people can build bigger games with deeper social experiences and all the kind of features that really drive high engagement in games and a lot of player participation.
Yeah, because you should not have to compromise the vision that you've got for your game. Yeah. And the reality of the market we're in today is you have a lot of competitors. So you have, first of all, competitors who have figured out how to do this. You've got competitors who have done this for 10 or 20 years. So they might be spending way more than they should be, but they have the engine behind them that lets them do more. But also you're competing with a Roblox game. You're competing with Minecraft. Like these things are out there and you don't get to just exist in your own tiny realm in which these people don't exist. Like real-time multiplayer, live game services, cooperation, competition between players, virtual goods economies. Like it's what people have come to expect in their games now. And I just have been increasingly thinking about like the economy we're going towards games is like this direct from imagination to the screen economy. And the kind of 3D graphics we can do now and animation and storytelling, like that's very much alive and true because there's so many tools that help you go direct from imagination to the screen. That needs to now also encompass the kind of virtual worlds and multiplayer and social experiences that you really want to be able to have for your customers.
John, Trapper, thank you guys for taking the time today to chat with me, to launch the pilot episode of the Beamable Game Dev podcast.
Yeah,
And
thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Josh. Awesome.
We're gonna be seeing a lot of you guys, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Excellent.
Bye now. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Beamable Game Dev podcast. To learn more about Beamable or to try it for free, head on over to beamable.com.